People appearing already or not? I don't know how.
Yeah, it's on now already. Hello, everybody. I don't know whether this has started coming through yet. Hopefully it has. There we go. So the idea is that we're going to do a little bit to be released as like a podcast, and then we'll answer your questions too at the end, sort of thing. Hopefully it won't take too long to do our little bit. I think we're going to do like 30 minutes, something like that, Nick, maybe even less. And then we'll kind of take questions from the stream and kind of potter around. I just want to say as well that FPL family, our friends, are on at 8 o'clock, and I kind of urge everybody to go over and watch them rather than staying with us past that point. But hopefully it'll be very interesting for the next kind of half an hour, 45 minutes or so. You ready, Nick? Should we get going?
Yep, let's go. Cool. I'm ready.
All right. Hello. So in lieu of a podcast this week, we're just coming on live on YouTube to talk about how we did in Game Week 14, talk about our plans for the next couple of weeks, and a Wgtq+A to round off this weekend of football and this Sunday derby day. I'm obviously very happy, but one man who's feeling a bit less 4-2, Nate, get it, is Nick. How are you, mate?
That's absolutely terrible, Tom. Shocking. Yeah, I'm not great, to be honest. It was just one of those game weeks. I thought that I'd have a little bit of jam just at the end with some DNA 9 point off my bench because Aguero didn't play. But of course, Liverpool went and scored in that final minute of the game thanks to some Jordan Pickford hilarity. So, that was a bit of a blow to my game week. Just generally, just one of those game weeks. Looks like it's a red arrow as well for me. And obviously with the North London derby not going my way at all. Just what a weekend to forget in terms of the football, I think. So let's get cracking. Just to say quickly, of course, we are Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL and use Spotify, SoundCloud, or wherever you'd like to listen and subscribe. So go on then. What we're talking about today?
Yep, so we're on for about 30 minutes, as I've mentioned already, to update you guys on the features, which are the market forces, zombies, and England's, and maybe look at the mini league if we can, but probably not, before taking questions from Twitter and the audience. And we'll be talking about kind of our teams, I guess, how we did this week, just to begin with, and also our plans for the next week. It literally, the dust is settled. We haven't had that much time to do that much research, so it's been more of a talking around the subjects and providing stats where we can.
Yeah, sounds great. And thanks for the questions. Yeah, we're looking forward to our second live performance of the weekend after being on the Breakfast Club with Joe and Dave from Fancy Football Scout on Saturday morning as well. So if you haven't listened to that, it's worth a check out. So anyway, let's get started with the game week reviews quickly. So do you want to start with your game week?
Yeah, it was actually all right. It was 57 points. I was feeling kind of a lot happier until today. Yesterday, I was looking at a very big green arrow to up to 30k. Now it's a tiny green arrow, 2k rise to about 58k. I did the Raheem Sterling move in, and I did all right. I mean, I got the goal. I wish he could have done a bit more. Like there's that kind of amazing run where he hit the post as well. And if that had gone in, this tapping had gone in, and then I'd have been laughing really. As it stood, 56, got all four defenders at the back. Ederson lost his clean sheet, of course. And Arnautovic as well got an assist. But Martial, Richarlison, Salah, and Aguero didn't show up. So I got success off the bench, who spooned over a one-on-one for Watford. So yeah, 57 points. And a bit of a poor bench, really, is what's cost me to some extent, with a success Kennedy / Bro Potus and Bennett being my free benchers, so nothing really to call on in events like with Aguero not really featuring. What about you, Nick? You weren't very happy for a little while, but did it get better?
I mean, not particularly. I got 50. I got 55 points, one less than you. I'm not sure if you said 56 and 57. I'm not sure if you're counting.
It's 57, yeah.
Are you counting a Robertson bonus point because that's been taken away?
No, it was
just to let you know.
Success off the bench. I forgot about.
Okay, so yeah, 55 here. It is actually a red arrow, apparently, according to Fancy Football Fix. So yeah, a little bit peeved. Obviously, I had that DNA clean sheet wrapped up. It's the second time in as many weeks that's happened to me. Last minute goals sort of took away my Wolves clean sheet the other game week against Arsenal. And now this game week with DNA losing it at the last minute. It was just one of those weeks where things didn't go my way. I was just waiting for that Leroy Sané assist to be awarded as well. But apparently FPL claims that it was a pass and not a shot, even though the conjecture of the ball was towards the keeper, and Begovic, I think he was rewarded with a save for it as well. So I just don't quite get the logic of how they claimed that he was passing and not taking a shot, and therefore didn't get the assist. And I think he would have got bonus points as well. So that was another 4 points or so that were robbed from me. Just a little bit annoyed, as you can tell.
Pitchforks out, Nick.
Yeah, a bit annoyed. Aguero didn't play, obviously, but I captained Hazard. He got me an assist at least, so that was a 12-pointer in total. The defence generally was relatively solid. Wan-Bissaka 6, Alonso 6, Robertson 6, and Doherty scored, but Patricio in goal only got me 1 point, so I'm potentially getting rid of him. But yeah, all in all, it's not been a good few weeks for me. I think you're about 50 or 60 points ahead of me when I was ahead about 5 game weeks ago. So I just need some sort of like lady luck to turn in my direction a little bit, but nothing so far.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of your 50-50 calls haven't really quite paid off, have they? And then the stuff like Sam Vokes, obviously last week, scoring adds insult to injury to some extent, doesn't it? But I mean, this is a nice segue to basically what we're going to talk about, which is our transfer plans and captaincy. And this obviously does bring in a few questions, obviously on Aubameyang and Kane, FPL Awesomeo, Vardy boys, Clipper and Gill. I've just seen FPL physios mention this in the chat. Ask, we want some chat about Kane versus Aubameyang for Kun Aguero coming out. Martin SC1 asked what are the pros and cons for bringing in Kane, and Sean Murphy on the other side of things asked, should we just forget all about Kane and bring Alba in? So I think this probably covers our transfers and captains to some extent too. It's maybe worth talking about. So Nick, on this particular question, what are you doing with Kun Aguero? Who are you turning into and why?
So at the moment with Aguero, I'm possibly going to hold him, and it's a bit controversial, but my plan was to bring in Aubameyang the following game week, and I wanted Aguero for that final game against Watford. Now, it depends a lot in terms of what Pep says in the next couple of days, if we hear from him at all, if he tells us that Aguero is fit for Watford. I would be tempted just to hold him for that final game week before I do that swap for Aubameyang, because Arsenal have Manchester United. Obviously Manchester United perhaps haven't been sort of the same Manchester United of old, but still it's a tough fixture, whilst Manchester City arguably have the easy fixture where they could potentially score another 4 goals and Aguero could easily be in the points again. And then after that, with game week 16, that's when I wanted to bring in an Arsenal player because their run is really nice. They've got Huddersfield, Southampton, Burnley, Brighton. So that was my original plan, was to hold Aguero for 1 more week and then swap him for Aubameyang when sort of Arsenal have Huddersfield and Aguero has Chelsea, Manchester City have Chelsea. But with the news with Aguero, with Aubameyang's performance, I'm starting to think, well, maybe I should make the move early, perhaps do the swap. I was looking at my midfields as well. I've still got Hazard. I'm thinking maybe I could do a swap Hazard to Sterling. I could afford that very easily because I've got a little bit in the bank as well. So that's a potential move I was thinking about. The other one I was thinking about with Hazard was a Spurs midfielder. So I wanted to cover Spurs for the next run of games, and I think we talked a little bit off air about Spurs and how we were going to cover them if we're not going for Kane. And with that run of fixtures, I think Eriksen or Ali could be a really good pick, or even maybe Heung-min Son with Spurs' fixtures. They've got Southampton, Leicester, Burnley at home, Everton away, Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home, Cardiff away. So that's a really nice Christmas run, and you can see lots of goals for Spurs, perhaps some clean sheets as well. So I think they're definitely a team that, even though they got trounced today, that we need to think about covering. But actually, the move that I'm probably definitely going to make first is I'm going to do a goalkeeper switch.
Oh, boy.
So I've been doubled up in Wolves for a little while, and it's incredibly painful seeing those clean sheets disappear in the last minute against Arsenal, against Huddersfield, against Cardiff. I've had Doherty and Patricio, and it's just horrible just seeing those 1-pointers and those 2-pointers week in, week out. And it's just destroying my rank as well, having these guys. So I was thinking in terms of goalkeepers. I know you guys might not be too interested, but I've done a bit of analysis anyway. And the man I'm looking at is Fabianski. I think West Ham's fixtures are really great, and I think we're going to talk about some of their attacking assets a little bit later, but they've got a run of Cardiff, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Watford, Southampton, Burnley, Brighton. That's a really, really nice run of fixtures for West Ham. Definitely a team that is worth them considering and covering at this moment in time. So you've got the likes of Anderson and Arnautovic, who we're probably going to talk about, but I think Fabianski is the one I'm looking at in terms of goalkeeping. In terms of the underlying stats, incidentally, last season, game week 1 to 14, he was top for saves with 60 and had the best save percentage in the Premier League with 81.1%. This season, he's second for saves overall, just behind Joe Hart. He's made 57 saves. Fabianski also has the third best save percentage currently with 75%, and this is goalkeepers that played every single game. Only Ederson and Alisson have more than him. And actually, incidentally, Lloris, if you're going for a premium goalkeeping asset, has the best save percentage of all the goalkeepers. And this was a stat I had earlier in the day, and I was like, this is a really nice stat to share on the pod. But after seeing Spurs concede 4 goals tonight, I don't know if many people are thinking about Lloris now, but even though he's only played 9 games, he had the best save percentage with 84.2%. And with Spurs fixtures, I think he would be perhaps a decent way of covering Spurs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see why you're moving the keeper on. I think it's one of those things that, like, at the start of the season, you have a bit of a template in place in terms of your defence and the guys you're not going to move around. And for a lot of people, it was 2 Wolves players. Now with Patricio not ticking over and Wolves really struggling to keep clean sheets at the moment, I completely understand that, and it's probably worth not having that double up anymore. Doherty, for me, actually might be going down to first sub this week. So while you're busy doing that, I'm probably going to be taking a very, very large hit. I'm probably going to be taking a -8 this week. One part of it is to future-proof to some extent. So my plan at the moment is to bring in Aubameyang. And the reason I'm doing that is, well, I love Aubameyang generally as a player. He's 10.9 million, so I get a little bit of money out of him from selling Sergio Aguero. And I'm be backing Arsenal against Man United. And there's a couple of good reasons for this. Tom, FPL Centre, mentioned to me, and I did look this up too, that the shots conceded, Man United are actually 4th bottom for shots conceded over the last 4 game weeks, 64. Fulham have conceded 2 more than they have. And Arsenal have actually had the most attempts in the last 4 game weeks. So potentially we are a bit of a side on the rise. We're second for shots in the box as well, 38, just 4 behind Man City and just 2 ahead of Liverpool. Watching us today, even though Aubameyang often to the eye is a bit languid, a bit poor, it definitely seemed that something was working, especially in the second half when he was playing as part of the 2 of Lacazette. And for me, that game week 16 against Huddersfield is the big one. I think that'll be when I captain him. But the reason I'm doing all 3 moves that I'm thinking of doing at the moment is because I want to roll that game week, because in game week 17, I'm removing Mo Salah and putting Harry Kane in. So I want to have 2 free transfers then to do whatever I need to do. So game week 16 has to be a roll week. So game week 15 is the week that I do some changes. So Aubameyang in, Felipe Anderson is probably going to come in for Martial, I think. I've had enough of Martial. Basically, that was a pretty poor decision. He was overperforming, and I think I'm going to be removing Bropotas Kendi for Brooks. I noticed he didn't start against Man City for Bournemouth, which suggests he's going to play against Huddersfield, and it kind of just sorts up my bench a bit because at the moment, as I've mentioned, the bench was Success, Kennedy, and Bennett. So if I bring Brooks in for Kennedy, then I can bench Doherty and still have Bennett and Success. But at least I've got Doherty and like a good bencher going on. But yeah, I think I'm team Aubameyang at the moment, and I'm going to be ignoring Kane until game week 17. So 2 weeks going Kaneless, and it's going to be very difficult, especially against Southampton, to go through that. But I think that's basically where I'm going to be. And part of the reason for that is just because with all these things, it really depends on your team and where your team is and how your team's doing. A lot of the time people advise you they're coming at it from their own team. But for me, my team needs a lot of work around the edges. Like the bench needs to be looked at. The quality that I've got in my team needs to be looked at and sorted out. If I'm buying Kane in, I'm diluting the quality of my midfield even more because I've got to turn Martial into a 5.5 or something like that, as opposed to trying to sort things out. I need more money, not less. So working with Aubameyang and hoping that Man United is probably going to hold no fear for most teams at the moment. I'm hoping that works is just going to be the case. But I wouldn't forget about Kane. Game week 17 is definitely in because he'll be the captains there. So Nick, Kane-wise, then I know you said you might be holding Aguero. Another bit of Jamie Jackson news there. With Kane, you're planning to bring him in, are you? And you'll be doing that in game week 17 as well if you stick to your plan. Is that true?
I hadn't planned that, actually. I was probably going to think about holding Aubameyang. I mean, Aubameyang's got Southampton.
I don't mean for Aubameyang. I mean,
as well as Aubameyang.
Yeah, you're just not going to bring Kane in at all.
I don't know how I'd be able to fund that. That's the problem.
Sell Salah.
My second striker's only 5.6 million. I mean, I could potentially sell Salah for that Manchester United game. Would be another hit. It's a lot of moving players around. Last time we brought Harry Kane in, I was expecting him to bang the goals in for fun. I think it was for Cardiff at home, and he blanked. I remember the season before there was some really nice home fixtures which I brought him in for on a -8. I can't remember if it was something like Huddersfield at home or Burnley at home and Swansea at home or something like that, and he blanked in all of them. And he's just been a serial blanker in most recent game weeks. I think a lot depends, I suppose. I do want a Spurs player. I do want some coverage in that Spurs team. That's why I'm thinking maybe the likes of Christian Eriksen could come in the midfield, and he's a lot more affordable, and I can fit him in a lot more easily by getting rid of the likes of Hazard perhaps or Sane to fit him in without too much sort of damage to my team. So I think I don't know about Kane. I think I'm planning my Aubameyang, and I'm planning some form of Spurs coverage in the midfield, and that's my general plan for the next few game weeks at least.
No, it definitely makes sense. I was a little bit annoyed actually because I put the Aubameyang. I had Aubameyang in. Like, I think after you said it on the last pod, I really started thinking about like my plan for the next three, which is the beauty of doing this sort of thing with one of your friends because you can get still their ideas. But I was thinking about how I was going to do the next three, and then working it with Aubameyang, a bit of an awkward fixture against Man United, but now I'm emboldened to do it. Right, whereas before it was kind of an awkward transfer. But before we move into talking about the midfielders a little bit, should we just see how the market is reacting to what's going on? Like, what are the market forces like this week, Nick?
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting market forces. Of course, it's the game week's only just finished, so it's very early days. But it's a week of straight swaps. The entire market force is all about those straight swaps. So leading the way in terms of transfers in is Aubameyang with over 100,000 transfers in already, and Kane has over 55,000 transfers in as well in terms of the forwards. And Aguero's been sold by over 174,000 managers at this moment in time. So that's suggesting that everyone is selling Aguero for either Aubameyang or Kane, and 2/3 of the populace are going for the Aubameyang choice, 1/3 for the Kane. So looking at Arsenal's fixtures, they've got Manchester United, Spurs have Southampton at home. Arguably, Spurs have the better fixture, but people aren't looking at that. People are thinking about Aubameyang's current form versus Spurs' current form, and choosing Aubameyang as the better pick, perhaps reacting to this game week. Obviously, if Kane had got the brace, Aubameyang had perhaps only got the one goal. It might be the other way around. We don't know, but Aubameyang is also the cheaper option. Maybe that's weighing up in people's minds in terms of not being able to afford a straight swap for Aguero to Kane, but being able to afford a straight swap for Aguero to Aubameyang. Otherwise, it's all about straight swaps, as I said. We've also got the Hazard to Sterling swap. It was a big mover before the game week began. It's still a big mover as the game week has finished. Over 65,000 managers have sold Hazard. Over 75,000 managers have brought in Sterling. So that's definitely a straight swap that's happening. Sterling, of course, he's a player I don't own. I've only got Sané and Kun. I really do want to own him. I've got to think about how I bring this guy in as well, because he has been brilliant this season. He's now the top performing player in FPL, and he's really critical for those players that have sort of climbed up the ranks. Whilst I've been free falling, the managers that have owned and captained Sterling have been absolutely smashing it, and I've missed out on a lot of points by not owning this guy, and I will continue to probably miss out on points by not owning him. So I do need to think about, can I bring him in? Can I just do a Hazard to Sterling swap? Should I stop being a doubter and saying, I'm going to keep Hazard or keep Salah and just say enough is enough? I need to cover Sterling and bring him in. And then even owning Sané and Aguero is not enough for Manchester City. It's all about Sterling. I don't know. It's a tough one. As I always say, we don't even know if Sterling perhaps is going to get his rests. He might even get his rest, as he got Watford and then got a really tough game against Chelsea. So it'll be a good time for Sterling to have a rest. So I don't know, but the market definitely still leaning towards bringing in Sterling. His ownership's now up to 17.9%. So still he's a little bit of a differential, but the market, especially the top 100K, are really taking note of this guy. And finally, the other straight swap is the other one you touted, Tom. Martial, 52,000 managers have transferred him out. Felipe Anderson, 68,000 managers have transferred him in. So a lot of people are now taking a note of Felipe Anderson, 4 goals in 4. With West Ham's fixtures, they're definitely a team to start thinking about how you're going to cover them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm really, really surprised by the fact that double the Kane buy-ins or Aubameyang buy-ins. And I think that is because you can do that for Aguero in one free transfer. You don't have to find any money there. But yeah, I guess that a lot of it does seem there's a lot of things shifting there, doesn't it? With Hazard and Cunagüero, who have been the stalwarts of our little template for a little while, moving off. And I think maybe let's just talk about these cheap midfielders a little bit. So Gabriel at FPL Lens asked us if any 7 million midfielders have caught our eye. And I've mentioned Felipe Anderson a couple of times. And I think that he's 9%. I think he's 9% owned now, maybe up to 10. I think he's the next one who's going to be on the cusp of really coming through, especially with Arnie looking a bit. Well, I mean, he came off 70 minutes, Arnie, so you've got to be expecting he's going to play versus Cardiff. But the next kind of up until game week 21, there's a fantastic run of fixtures: Cardiff, Crystal Palace, and Fulham in the next 3. Like, I'm doubling up on West Ham there. And with Felipe Anderson himself, what's really interesting is that his profile as a player and what he is doing has changed a bit. So in the first 8 or 9 game weeks of the season, he was playing a primarily creative role and not really showing up in the attacking stats. I think at one point he created 23 chances in 6 game weeks. He's now completely reverted the other way. So in the last 4, he's taken 10 attempts at goal, 8 of which were in the box. In terms of in the box, he's joint second with Raheem Sterling, Mo Salah, and he's just behind Cardiff juggernaut Callum Patterson for shots in the box among midfielders, which is very, very encouraging stuff. And it seems like he's definitely taken on an offensive mantle with West Ham. And a couple of West Ham fans that I've spoken to have mentioned the fact that he's really kind of getting into the groove now, it seems, with West Ham. I think that form plus fixtures make that a very, very deadly mix for me. Martial, unfortunately, he did have. I gave him a couple of games. I'm sure he's going to troll me at some point. But I find it very difficult to ignore Felipe at 7.0. I really do, and I think that he's only going to go up and up and up after. I'm sure he's going to return against Cardiff, and off we go there. Really, I mean, are you looking at Felipe, Nick? Are you looking at any other players in this particular area?
I definitely think that Felipe Anderson is worth considering. He is pretty prolific in the most recent game weeks, and as you said, West Ham's fixtures are brilliant. I don't actually have an Arnautovic either, so if I was going to cover West Ham offensively in some way, I would be perhaps looking at Anderson in terms of coverage. I don't know how I'm going to fit him into my team at this current moment in time. I've still got Fraser as my 4th midfielder, and he's got Huddersfield up home at next, so I've sort of held him in the last few game weeks, and they've had some tough fixtures. But Huddersfield at home, I'm going to be keeping Fraser. I'm going to be keeping Sane. If I get rid of Hazard, it'll be for someone like Sterling, and I'm keeping Salah. So it's tough to sort of find a slot for either Arnie or Anderson in my team. I mean, the other one, in terms of the question, the other midfielder that's still worth a shout out, and I think a lot of people own him anyway, is Richarlison. So he's the same price, but I think just playing out position is always an exciting sort of prospect for a midfielder at his price. And he will be reclassified next year, most likely as a striker. Everton have middling fixtures. They've got Newcastle at home, Watford at home, then Manchester City away, and Spurs at home. But I still think he's a great prospect. And you've been unlucky not to get returns from him in the last couple of game weeks. And his temperament is a little bit of a worry as well. When I owned him for that 1 game week, he headbutted someone and got sent off. He was involved. He was involved in a little bit of argy-bargy actually in the Liverpool game. I can't remember who it was, but he gave someone quite a bit of almost like a headbutt to the shoulder. Probably not going to get any retrospective action for it, but it's worth noting anyway. And I think Richarlison's still a good pick. You planning on holding him then for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. He's got Newcastle up next, who have got the joint most big chances conceded in the last 4 game weeks. Cardiff with 13 are third. So I mean, a few people have been lauding their defence recently, but I mean the stats are still there. But they aren't as solid as say Huddersfield are, who are looking a lot better. They've only conceded 6 big chances recently, which is the same as Man City actually. But yeah, Richarlison's going to stay at least for those next 2 home games, and feasibly just stay for an awfully long time. In fact, because I mean Everton, they do kind of run into Man City and Tottenham 17 and 18, but then after that, game week 19 to 26, they've got a great run of fixtures where they don't play any teams in the top 6, and that also takes in visits to Huddersfield, Southampton, Burnley, and home games against Bournemouth, Leicester, and Wolves. So, I mean, again, he's going to play every minute. He did play every minute for Marco Silva at Watford, and I think he played every game last year, didn't he? So probably not going to need a rest, and it's just going to be quite a player that you can happily set and forget there. I've made a lot of money on him as well, so there's no chance I'm going to be selling. I think that it's probably a case of looking at the brilliant Brazilians at the moment, almost in that kind of mid-price bracket, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're the two standout picks. I mean, you've got the cheaper assets. I think Brooks is a very interesting prospect that you mentioned. You're perhaps bringing in. He's definitely a cheap enabler if you wanting to perhaps free up an extra 2 million. And then you've also got Ryan Fraser, who's been sort of leading the way in terms of chances created and big chances created in terms of midfielders, and has definitely been performing brilliantly this season. But I think Anderson and Richarlison at 7 million are the two standout picks.
Yeah, exactly. Just a word on David Brooks as well. He is an excellent, what I like to call a Swiss Army knife of a player. He's the best utility player, I think, at the moment. Tom Kearney may come in and be that guy actually going forward. But David Brooks, he does a few things. One is he rotates very, very well with Doherty. So whenever Doherty has a bad game, stick him on the bench and shove Brooks in. Two, he's 5.1, so you're more than happy to play him or bench him. And three, he still plays for a fairly attacking Bournemouth team, despite the fact that they've recently run out of steam to some extent and lost their purple patch. So he's looking like the guy I want to bring in. Just I might take a -8 to get this guy in, just because he's going to be so useful, I think, over Christmas. And undoubtedly, I think we should probably just mention this quickly. There will probably be some rotation over Christmas. And last year we saw it happen, and this year I'm sure it's going to happen again. Where if you ever post any move, people can be like, "Oh, what about rotation?" Like, rotation is always going to happen. It's part and parcel of this time of year. Any discussion of it is basically moot, and you shouldn't just let that change your perception or your opinion. If there's a player who's never going to really play, then fair enough. But for most players, I think it's going to happen. You can't really predict it, and there's no right and wrong about it. It's just the case you just don't think about it that much. You don't really think about it too much these days, do you, when you're making moves?
No, I try not to. But then with Manchester City, I do always worry a little bit. I've been a bit concerned. I have been a bit concerned with Sterling, and perhaps I've let that impact my moves. I've always thought the likes of Hazard at Chelsea, Kane at Spurs. Some of these players are kind of immune to rotation, but especially around Christmas, there's always that risk that even the likes of Kane is going to miss out a game. And I can't remember the quote from Poch, but I think he said something along the lines of "There's this many games, 10 games in 30 days, everyone's going to be rotated," or something like that. I can't remember what it was.
Only exactly. Lloris is going to play every game or something like that, he said.
Yeah. So I think with everyone, you have to worry about it a little bit.
Cool. I think just a couple more questions from our bit. We'll wrap up this little pod bit, and then we'll take some questions from the audience on YouTube. The final question. Let's go to the final question. The final question is a take a chancer. FPL chancer Dan asks if we should, in inverted commas, underlined and bolded, have a plan over Christmas, or whether it's better to just be reactive to events as they unfold. Quite an interesting meta question there for you, Nick. Are you more of a planner? Are you more of a reactor?
I would consider myself a planner generally. I always look around 2 to 3 game weeks ahead. Every time we do the pod as well, I always sort of look at the fixtures for every single team, and I pick out the teams that have the really good fixtures. I think even a run of 5 to 6 games. I think West Ham are a really good example. And then I'll plan my transfers around bringing players in from those teams. So we'll look at the informed players, the likes of Felipe Anderson, and those are the players that we'll be bringing in. We're not planning on just bringing them in for that one fixture against Cardiff at home. If we think, oh, they've actually got Manchester City and Spurs up next, it makes it a bad transfer. So I always try and concentrate. And if I'm going to bring in a player, if it's someone like Kane, I wouldn't just do it for one game week and then think, right, I'm going to react the immediate week and take him out. I try and avoid that as far as possible by looking at a run of fixtures and thinking, if I'm bringing in this player, he's going to be in there for a little while.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I try to give players 4 weeks, but sometimes it does change. So if Martial, for example, getting rid of him just because another player has emerged is what's going to happen. The final word for me on planning really is it's very good to plan your captains for this time of year. I put my kind of own little list of captains up on Twitter yesterday, but it really helps you in order to kind of just navigate what moves you're going to be wanting to make and when. So it's worth just getting a season ticker up, hours, FPLs, whatever, and just looking for and thinking, right, on this game week, who's probably going to be the top man? What team has the best fixture? Who's going to be the top man there? And just trying to make sure that you have these players, or you have an alternative to cover those players. So this week everyone's going to have Kane maybe against Southampton. I'll probably have Mo versus Burnley, or Arnie versus Cardiff. I don't know. And then it kind of moves through Alba, Kane. Check that out. That's a great rotation until the end of near enough the end of the season, actually. So it's worth having a look at these sorts of things and planning those sorts of things in advance. Now I know it's almost 8 o'clock, so we're going to wrap up our our pod bit here. And then we'll stick around for a bit, but I know the FPL family are just going to get going, so we won't be on for too much longer. Just got a couple of things to mention on our pod. The first thing is the FPL London meetup coming up in 2 weeks' time on the 14th of December, very, very close. So we in MathSafe FPL cordially invite you to this year's Christmas drinks, 7 p.m, 14th of December at the Marylebone Sports Bar and Grill. If you haven't let me know already and you can come, please do. I think we've got about 30 or so people coming now, apparently, which can be very, very good. And Lee and Sam are both going to be there too. So we've got some star appeal, as it were. There's a theme every week. There isn't one in this stream, but last week it was Batman, and General Zod got there first. And social media.
Yep. And if you want to join our league code is 516-441. You can find us on Twitter at WGTA_FPL, and we'll be back for a full proper pod in game week 17. So yeah, for now, if you want to ask us some questions in the stream, we'll be happy to answer them. Talk a bit more about Aubameyang and Kane, defenders like Alonso as well if you want. So yeah, fire away with some questions and we can take them.
All right, bye. I was just recording that for our for the podcast. I'm going to cut up in a minute. Right, do you guys have any questions while we're on the stream, or are you happy to? Well, we shall see. Just at us. Oh, it's quite weird. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think Hamish K asked us about getting Aubameyang after United. I think generally, in terms of Aubameyang, I think that will be my plan. I'm probably going to not get him in this game week. I know you're the opposite way around, Tom. You want to bring him in for that Manchester United game, and you pointed out some very interesting statistics about Manchester United being pretty poor defensively. I think definitely there's a case for holding off, and I think you could even perhaps bring in Kane for that one game week against Southampton at home, even a 1 week punt, perhaps. But I think you think that's too dodgy. I mean, you're taking a -8. That's a little bit of a risk as well, isn't it?
If you can do it for a free transfer, then maybe I'll be behind that. Because I've got to do a -4 anyway. I might as well do that for the long term. I remember the last time when people were taking a hit to bring Kane in for one great game week, because I didn't go down too well.
I think it's a tough one. I mean, with Aubameyang, it's worth mentioning that he was extremely prolific, and when you did your prospecting the prospects, he had a better sort of goal sort of ratio than Harry Kane himself. But this season, I think his underlying stats are actually worse than Harry Kane. He's got a shot accuracy of 41.9% compared to Kane's 52.1%, and in terms of minutes per chance, it's only one every 33.4 compared to Kane's 26.1. So he does have the inferior underlying stats as well. And the focus is definitely on Aubameyang because he scored 2 goals this game week. Harry Kane only scored 1. If it was the opposite way round, we'd probably be waxing lyrical about Harry Kane. So it's very much these fine margins each game week. And it is worth mentioning that I still think Harry Kane perhaps is a really good pick, even though he's slightly more expensive than Aubameyang. Both have very good fixtures, so it's worth considering both. And perhaps even, if you can, thinking about how you can double up on the sort of premium forward line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, as I said earlier, I think I was a little bit annoyed actually that Aubameyang did so well. I was like, I don't know, with Kane, it really just it's another Salah situation, isn't it? Where you've got to really balance up the fact that you're going to spend a lot of money on the second most expensive player in the game, and how that's going to impact the quality of your squad elsewhere. Like, I think Aubameyang for game week 16 for Huddersfield looks like the top guy. I mean, someone's actually just asked us about Matt Fabian 94 has just asked us about Lacazette as well as an alternative. And there was a question actually in the thing that I forgot to read out from FBO Einstein about that. I think Lacazette is also a good option for a lot cheaper as well. I probably should have mentioned on the stream that the reason I like Aubameyang is one, because of doing the prospects and the prospects, 2, many years of playing FIFA with Borussia Dortmund, and 3, just the fact that from a subjective point of view, I think he's just a very, very, very good player to watch and own. But Lacazette for 9.6 again is a very, very good choice. He and Lacazette are actually both fairly clinical strikers. Like, they don't really do the Kane and take lots and lots of shots. They will do that kind of thing where they only take a shot when they're fairly sure they're going to score. So they have something like 3 shots, 2 goals, something like that. And I think Aubameyang had something like what. I think it's the last 10 shots on target he scored or something with Aubameyang, which is quite ridiculous, really. But that's kind of what you want from a striker, right? I don't know. I still think it's probably going to be Aubameyang for me for now.
I think with Lacazette, he would act as a decent foil, as a secondary striker, perhaps, if you were planning on getting Kane or getting Aguero. He is, he's quite expensive, so you would have to perhaps go for premium front line. To have Lacazette as your only premium option perhaps wouldn't be the best pick. I mean, Aubameyang is still my preference over Aubameyang and Lacazette, but he is that 2 million cheaper. So you could potentially get Kane and Lacazette and have that as your premium front line, and that would be your way of sort of covering both teams.
Cool. All right. So we didn't really mention him, actually. We kind of breezed over him a little bit, so maybe it wasn't the time, and maybe we should have spoken about it a little bit more on the main bit. But FPL Phelan has just asked us, what will we do with Mo Salah? Do we think that Salah, because he got taken off, might not get the armband against Burnley for us? Might Sturridge start or something? Like, what are you thinking about that? Because I guess captain from next week is actually quite a tough one.
Yeah, so we didn't really cover our captain picks, did we? But I think Salah would be my captaincy pick still for next game week against Burnley. I think you have to view the early substitute perhaps even as a positive rather than a negative. He didn't play the whole 90 minutes, which means he's going to be a little bit fresher, only a little bit fresher than some of the other options. And I still think he's going to be one of the key leading men for the Liverpool front line next game week. It's certainly not a case that he'll be dropped or sort of fall out of favour with Klopp. He only substituted him because I think Klopp perhaps wanted sort of some more attacking impetus and some fresh legs on the team, and saw sort of Salah as the substitute that particular week. But yeah, I think he'll definitely still play. I would be surprised if he misses out or starts on the bench. It'll be a bit of a shock. And even if he does start on the bench, he's always kind of that character that could come off the bench, play 20 minutes and net a couple of goals like we've seen from Aubameyang. And Burnley have been nutter dross this season. They've been the worst in terms of goal attempts. They're even worse than Fulham in terms of the actual goal attempts that they've had against them this season. So I think for me, when looking at some of the other picks, you've got sort of Manchester City playing Watford. You could feasibly, if you own Sterling, pick him as captain again, or even maybe Aguero. I've seen a few differential picks. I know you mentioned actually, Tom, that you were thinking about captaining on Arnautovic against Cardiff at home, and someone, Goops in our sort of Slack group, mentioned he was thinking about Wilson against Huddersfield. So there's some interesting picks out there for next game week, some differential captain picks, but I think I'm going to stick and go with Salah because I think Burnley it could be a massive win for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that there is the worry with Liverpool and Mo Salah, particularly because he's the one that a lot of people own, maybe Sadio Mane too, is the Bournemouth game, I think, on Saturday. Was it Saturday or Sunday? So they're away at Bournemouth, and then I think it's on Tuesday they've got a very, very big game in the Champions League. So I think that would be the game that I would underline as being the one that we're going to probably see quite a lot of rotation. I know Bournemouth is going to represent the challenge, but I think that's probably going to be the time when players aren't going to be playing. I don't know. I don't know whether it's a tough one, isn't it, with this sort of thing, because you're trying to kind of second guess the manager, and we don't really know the condition of all of the players, right? But I think with Mo being taken off a bit early, you've got to hope that means he's going to play versus Burnley. And I think the Bournemouth game is going to be the one that they're going to kind of put out a team to win it, but they're probably not going to put out their strongest team. I think that kind of makes no sense, doesn't it? Because they're still alive in Champions League to some extent.
Yeah, I think we might see some rotation with Liverpool, but I'll still be surprised if Salah misses out at all. So yeah, I'd expect him to start, and I probably will be captaining him. That's my call anyway on him.
Yeah, FPL Dare asked about captains a second ago, so I mentioned that I'm probably going to be doing Salah as well. But I do really like Arnautovic as a captain against Cardiff. I really do like that. I think it might be a nice week for that sort of thing, especially if a lot of people are going to be on Kane. A lot of people are going to be on Mo. And I think that on his day, Arnautovic can get you 10, 12 points. He did that against Burnley. Cardiff haven't been as terrible as Burnley. But equally, as I mentioned, I cited the big chances conceded stat earlier. Like, I think it really could happen there with him. It's one of those feelings that I'm sure will just lead nowhere. But cool. All right. take one or two more, and we'll...
Yeah, sure. So we had a question from Suraj about defenders, and he said between TAA, Robbo, and Alonso, who would you bench for the next game week? And that's a tricky one. I mean, ideally, I wouldn't bench any of them. That sounds like quite a tough sort of defensive choice. I think TAA did impress me actually against Everton. He's been on all the corners. He's taken a lot of free kicks. I think he's definitely got a few more assists in him. He's definitely a player as well defensively. If you own him, you're sitting pretty because he's about 1.2 million cheaper than some of the other premium defenders, and he's picking up assists here and there. I mean, Chelsea have Wolves, Alonso. I think with Liverpool, Burnley, I might even be tempted to bench Alonso out of those three, but it's I think it much depends on the rest of your team and who else you have available, because ideally I wouldn't bench any of those players.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree. It's one of those where it's very difficult to know without seeing the whole team, I guess. There are quite a few horrible bench headaches I see every now and again, and I purposely play to avoid bench headaches a lot of the time.
Yeah. So we also had a question about hits from FPL Chancer. He said, what do you both think about points hits? And he's definitely been avoiding them this year. But I think in the last couple of game weeks, I've taken a couple of -4s, and it's impacted the green to red arrows. And I'm not being particularly happy after doing them as well. I've done sort of 1 week switcheroos, which I said earlier that I tend to avoid and really don't like. But I did a switcheroo with Vokes, and he scored. And they can sort of blow up in your face, and they often do. I think you're going to do a -8, so perhaps it's more pertinent to hear your opinions on hits and why you're going to do a -8, which essentially puts you 8 points behind everyone else this game week, especially in a game week where there's the risk of rotation.
Why am I doing it? So one, as I said earlier, is because I don't want to do a transfer in game week 16, same out of game week 17 when I sell Mo. Two, I want Felipe Anderson. I think he's just looking very good. And three, I'm going to be. I think that my bench has been very poor, and it's really shown this week. Not having Kennedy, for example, and I would like to bring Brooks in for just over the Christmas period. Like, I don't really take hits either very much. It's just every now and again you get to a point where you're just like, well, I've got quite a few issues to sort out, and I'd really like to sort this out now, rather than booking in the transfer in a couple of weeks' time. I don't like that. I don't like doing that. I don't like kind of thinking, oh, yeah, then I'll remove him in game week 19, I'll remove him in game week 20. Like, when I'm doing planning, I'm planning for like the key men, what I'm going to be doing with them. The rest of the team is just detritus. And if I do need to do like a bench move at some point, then I prefer to just do it all in one go, rather than having kind of a bleed over the course of a period of time, I'm going to embrace a red arrow this week. I'm fairly sure. Like, I might not do the Brooks move. I might just do Felipe and Aubameyang. But I kind of just feel like it's just one of those times, really, like with hits especially, that you've got to wait and do it at the right moment when your team needs it. And I think my team does really need it. But I haven't lost that many points in hits this year compared to previous years when I was losing 50, 60 points or something. I can't remember how many that you did like a tally one year, didn't you, of my of the hits that I've lost. I've only made 12 points worth of hits this year.
Yeah, we might do that again, actually, because that was a really interesting pod when we looked at sort of our hits over the season. I think it was probably around game week 30 or something, and whether they'd benefited us or whether they'd been a negative, and sort of did some sort of risk-based analysis, risk profiling based on the amount of hits that we'd done. And I think last season you took a lot of hits because you were chasing to a certain extent, but I think you were taking hits and bringing in players that were sort of anti-template and that you thought would explode. Perhaps I've started doing that a little bit myself this season as well. Maybe I'm thinking maybe I should revert back to form of being sort of passive and a non-aggressive player. And it's interesting to do this analysis. I think you said previous seasons, your last season was a bit of a blip in terms of your overall rank, but previous seasons you've played very aggressively, taken a lot of hits, and it's been to your benefits by finishing in top 10k, top 20k on the back of it. So I think it very much depends. If you're chasing points, often taking those hits to sort out your team and fix it, especially after a few red arrows in a row, just is a necessity.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of it is sometimes with a hit, you've got to do it just to sort stuff out. Like it's always very good to muddle through with your team if you think that tomorrow, next week is your team looks good, but this week it looks a bit bad. I might as well just roll it or just muddle through with one transfer. But it's just the case that I've somehow contrived to have a really rubbish bench, and this week with people coming off with Wilson, with well, you almost had Dean off the bench with a 6, like with
9.
Diop, a 9, Christ, yeah, with people like having West Ham players like Orsamo and Stag having Diop and Balbuena, like it really showed like how poor my bench actually is. I'm finding success there, but Bennett's just really annoying. I don't know what I'm going to do with him. But I think I've got to remove Kennedy, and it would be nice to kind of have a double threat of having Brooks in, 1 to be my bencher, but 2 having a Huddersfield game that he's probably going to play. They're not that great, their defense is actually pretty good as in Huddersfield, but still, like it's just one of those things that I just want to do it now, get out of the way, and I'm not going to take a hit for another little while probably. Cool. All right. All done, Nick?
Yep, I think so. Cool. I think, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll probably do something like this again, but may your arrows be green, and we hope to assist you. And we'll speak to you, after the game week in next Friday, so in 2 game weeks' time. Maybe try to do something on Thursday or Friday, maybe do like a solo stream or something, but hopefully everyone's okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Cheers.